Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today I'm honored to introduce to you Darrell Williams, a leader who has had a truly inspiring journey. Darrell is a retired United States Army veteran who served for over 20 years, culminating in a vice presidential communications officer role where he led over 500 White House missions. He's also an inductee of the White House Communications Agency Hall of Fame, recognized for his outstanding contributions among many other professional recognitions. Since leaving the military, Darrell has channeled his commitment to service into Alliance Seminars Coaching, a faith-based organization offering motivational speaking, leadership workshops, and coaching. As a master certified life coach and a member of the Federal Coaching Network, he's dedicated to helping others find purpose, strength, and resilience, particularly focusing on leadership, relationships, and community. Darrell's journey from Compton, California to a decorated military career has been driven by a desire to be a beacon of hope. His life and career reflect values of loyalty, duty, and selfless service, values he continues to embody as he guides others toward personal and professional growth. So join us as we talk to Darrell as he shares his powerful insights from his remarkable journey and the lessons he's learned along the way. Let's welcome a true embodiment of a strategic veteran, Mr. Darrell Williams. Darrell, thank you so much for being here, brother.
Adam, thank you for having me, man. Love doing this.
Yeah, man, these are always so much fun. So let's jump right in, man. Where did you grow up and what inspired you to join the Army?
Sure. So I grew up in Compton, California. So for those listeners that know or are familiar with the movie Boys in the Hood, that's the era that I actually grew up in. And then my brothers and sister grew up during the era of straight out of Compton. So a lot of people ask me, hey, was the movie real? Like, hey, they didn't add anything to that. It was all true. That's kind of the lifestyle I grew up in. So as you can imagine, growing up, a lot of gang situations, drugs, drive-by shootings. I just had to believe that there's another way than this. Has to be a different lifestyle out there than this. And I think also me being the oldest, I wanted to kind of set the mark for my siblings that, hey, you don't have to do the fast money to make it. So when I met a recruiter my junior year of high school, I didn't really plan on joining the military. I just wasn't on my radar. And then once the recruiter showed me some statistics about how much it costs to go to college and things of that nature, I was like, you know what? This is about to get real. So let me pay attention to this guy, see what he has to offer. And he was straight up. He was like, hey, you get to travel, military pay for your education, you get to learn a trade. And I'm like, man, I said, can I send money back to my family when I join? It's like, absolutely. We got this thing called allotments. You can send as much as you want. Matter of fact, you're going to have your own clothes, free meals, medical and dental. So you can send back as much money as you want. And I'm like, dude, where do I sign up?
Yeah.
So I actually signed up, Adam, during they called the delayed entry program.
Yeah, I was on that program as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So I joined as a junior in high school. So going into my senior year, I already knew what I was going to do. The recruiter just told me, hey, just keep your nose clean and you'll be fine. So I think for me, joining was a part of just me being the oldest and wanting to kind of set the tone from a brother and sister, and then also just wanting to know that there was something else out there, because it's funny, when I got to basic training, you start talking to people, especially at night, getting to know each other. And I honestly did not know that there were neighborhoods where helicopters did not fly over your house, because that was just a common thing where I was.
It's crazy how the military brings people from all walks of life and backgrounds together, right? So, much like you, I joined because I wanted to get out of Southern Indiana. So I grew up, relatively poor. I wouldn't say destitute, but I mean,
I was right there. Same here.
Poor in the country. So 45 minutes from the nearest, anything, lots of riding my bicycle to my friends' houses to knock on the door and find out they're not home or whatever. So I didn't have to deal with, a lot of the same things that you probably dealt with in Compton with, I'm sure gang violence was a problem then, and drugs, if I recall, that's probably the height of the crack epidemic,
exactly,
so
what it was.
You got a lot of things going on, but it was kind of similar in Southern Indiana in that, anhydrous ammonia tanks are being stolen from farmers so that they can make meth. I remember an event in high school where, two guys that I went to high school with, that I was friendly with, ended up chasing me down and breaking the back windshield in my car with a beer bottle because they were strung out on meth, right? So, it's always interesting how the military can bring us together, and like you didn't know neighborhoods didn't have helicopters flying over them, right? That's foreign to you, but also you'd probably never met anybody like me from Southern Indiana who's grown up in meth towns, right? Like, so it's just awesome. I'm curious, was the Army the only branch that you considered? Were they the ones that kind of just latched onto you since military wasn't on your radar, or did you explore any other branches?
Good question. So I did not. The military, Army was the only one. And again, it was just that recruiter called me because, again, I wasn't looking for it. I forgot where I was. Might have been at a burger joint or something. And even when he came up, I started to try to walk away from him and dodge him. And he was so persistent. And matter of fact, one thing I remember about that conversation was, I think I told him I was going to college just to, hope he would walk away. And I tell you, Adam, it seemed like this dude just opened up a book. I think I even said, I'm going to University of Arkansas. I got some relatives out there, so I'm going to probably go to Arkansas. And Adam, it seemed like this dude opened up a book, went to the page that said University of Arkansas, and said, this is how much it costs to get a bachelor's degree. And it's like, as soon as I saw those numbers, I was like, well, we don't have that type of money. I don't have the type of grades to get scholarships. So tell me more about this thing here. So yeah, the Army, just because he was the first one that approached me, that was the only thing that was on my radar.
So let's talk about what was your MOS when you came in? Did you get a choice in that, and did you get what you wanted, and how did you enjoy that throughout your career?
Loved it. I wanted to come in at first as I think it was a 75 Bravo, which at that time was a personnel specialist. And then right before I was able to go, the recruiter contacted me and said, hey, there's an overstrength in 75 Bravos. The next best thing is a 71 Lima, administrative specialist. I'm like, do both of them kind of work in offices? Because I said, when I get out, I want to work in an office or something like that. He was like, that's about the closest you're going to get. I was like, well, I'm good with the 71 Lima. So I actually came in as a 71 Lima. I think now it's a 42 Alpha human resources specialist, which is perfect. And that was the best job that I could have had, because it allowed me to float between different types of organizations, where it was a strictly personnel or work for intel agency, work in a post office in Germany. I mean, I loved my MOS.
You're one of the only people I've had on the show that knew that they wanted to work in an office when they got out. Most of the people that I talk to are guys like just me, right? Like, I was an infantry guy. I got sold hook, line, and sinker on the videos from the recruiter, not knowing what the infantry was largely about. And, office, it's funny I say that because I'm building a business and I spend 99% of my time in my home office, behind a desk. But the office is never a place that I ever wanted to be. So I think it's amazing that you're solid in that foundation and you knew what you wanted to do, and that makes it easier for you to enjoy those really shitty moments that you have in the Army, because there's plenty of them, right? And particularly when you hate your job. I remember, as an infantryman, I would have much rather been in the field, wet, cold, tired, sweaty, hungry, doing my job and training than being stuck in the rear, being a janitor, because that's what we were. Either you're cleaning weapons or you're mopping floors and cleaning toilets. And that was the worst part for me. I would always take my platoon or my squad across the street into the woods, and we would disappear and do some training, quote unquote training, to get away from all of that stuff. So I think it's awesome. Like I said before we started recording, you have a very amazing career. Lots of recognition awards through your Podmatch profile that I saw. Too many for me to even remember or list. Some I've never heard of. But what really stood out the most to me is you are a vice presidential communications officer. Can you walk us through the journey to get there? And then what is that job? Like, what do you do? And how cool was the White House?
Right. So let me back up. Went in the Army, Human Resources. First assignment, I was like, dude, just get me as far away from California as possible. I want to go, like, what's the farthest I can go? And they were like, probably Germany at that time. I said, well, send me to Germany. I don't care where you send me. I just want to grow up. So I went to K-Town, Germany. Worked. I thought I was going to work in the actual post office because that other duties as assigned and all that. And I ended up working not in the post office, but in the warehouse. And they had two shifts. They had a A shift, 5 in the morning to 12, which is like, man, that's a cool shift to work on. No. I worked on the 1 to 9 shift, which is the B shift, right? All the work that the A shift left over, you just had to do it. Trucks come in, I'm offloading like sea land containers. I'm like, this is not what I signed up for, but
where's the office here?
right. But I'm telling you, what helped me out was once I knew I was going to join, I had 2 cousins, one that was in the Navy and one that was in the Army, but they only did like 2 years and they got out. So their biggest thing to me was, it's not going to be what you want. A lot of crazy stuff. You got to be mentally tough, and you need to make the best out of every situation. So I think that attitude helped me out a lot. So went to Germany, did a lot of different boards, Soldier of the Month, Soldier of the Quarter, all that type of stuff. Got recognized by the Sergeant Major. By the time I went to my E5 board, I had already went to every other board I can go to. Even though I didn't win the last board, it still gave me that recognition, gave me that confidence that, hey, I can do this. And then being the smart aleck that I was, I went to my E5 board. I think I got like 199 out of 200, right? Should have been humble and all that. Sergeant Major said, you got any questions for the board? I'm like, yeah. Who gave me a 199? Because I know I answered all the questions, right?
Damn, you did not say that.
I did. And then Sergeant Major was like, I knew you was going to ask that, so let me tell you something. This is a learning lesson. Just because you have all the answers doesn't mean that you know what it takes to be a leader. There's always something else out there. And man, that was like the best lesson that he could have told me. Like, Sergeant Major, I received that. Appreciate that information. I'm never going to forget it. Here we are, 2024, and that's right on top of my head because it was a great lesson.
Well, and those moments are so important, and they're so few and far between in the Army. Particularly, I came in 2003 and I got out in 2015. So, from about 2006 to about 2010, the Army was going through the surge and just putting anybody and everybody in, and they were promoting people way too fast. And you lose a lot of that knowledge and that kind of what that Sergeant Major had for you. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity to get valuable lessons like that just because of the way it was, right? And so it's not a surprise to me that sticks with you. I got chills when you said that because I had a similar situation at my E5 board with a Sergeant Major who gave me a higher score than I probably deserved because, unlike you, I didn't answer all the questions right. I didn't go to all those Soldier of the Month and Soldier of the Quarter boards, so I didn't get the reps in. But the fact of the matter was I at least knew where to find the information. I didn't try to bullshit my way through it. And I told him immediately, Sergeant Major, I don't have the answer to that. I know that it can be found here in this FM. I'd be happy to get that information for you. And, his advice back to me was that's the absolute best way to handle that as a leader. You're
Absolutely.
never going to have all the answers, and so never let go of that. And I carry that with me to this day when I help, talk to a new veteran who is coming to me for transition help. I'm like, I just did this 2 weekends ago on a Saturday. I had an hour-long phone call with a veteran who's looking to make friends, and I was like, look, man, I have to be honest with you. Like, I'm so focused on what I'm doing in my life right now that I have chosen not to go out and make friends. I'm new to Florida, relatively new to Florida. I've been here for 3 years, but I haven't gone out of my way to make friends because I'm focused on other things. I was like,
Absolutely.
but what I can do for you is I can be an earpiece and listen and let you vent, and I can help you work through the problem, and I can make suggestions for you. And you'd be surprised how far that actually goes as a leader.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. So from those boards, I had orders to go to Fort Hood, Texas. I'm thinking in my mind, hey, that's where the soldiers go. So I'm going there too. I'm going to make a name for myself. And the sergeant major came down for a staff visit and said, hey, I need to talk to you. I'm like, yeah, sorry. Like, they're going to allow an E4 promotable to go talk to a sergeant major. I'm like, the company's not going to allow that to happen. He's like, no. I'm going to be in a little area. I'm going to tell them that I want to talk to some soldiers just to get their advice and some stuff and all that. And you're going to be one of the names. I'm like, all right, if that works, because, those units back, this is 84, 85. It's like, man, you better not even think about talking to a senior leader without telling them why are you going, and you better not say anything bad and all that crazy stuff. And I go talk to Sergeant Major, and he's like, where you going? I'm like, so I'm going to Fort Hood. I already got orders. I'm ready. And he's like, I'm going to change your orders. And Adam, I'm like, why are you doing this, Sergeant Major? He's like, I'm going to send you to the Pentagon.
So you went to the Pentagon as an E4P?
I went to the Pentagon as an E4P. I'm like, what the heck am I going to the Pentagon for, Sergeant Major? Like, that's not soldiering. That's not, because my mindset was there's only one way to do the Army. Like you said, when I came in, there was the thing, be all you can be, and that's all I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to be that guy, right?
I was the last to enlist on the delayed entry program under the be all you can be before it switched to Army of One.
Absolutely. I wanted to do all that. And he was like, again, lesson learned. He's like, hey, we got a lot of people that's going to go to Fort Hood. Yes, it's a great place. He said, however, there's this thing growing called special assignments, and we need to put soldiers in these special assignments to help influence the civilians because they don't know what we do, right? Most of the time you go there, they think you're, extra help and all that, but we need to send smart people there to help them understand what we bring to the table. And I'm like, is there somebody else that can do that? Because I didn't know, Adam. I was really just so focused on what I thought I needed to do to make it.
Well, not only that, but you're an E4. Like, who's going to listen to you at the Pentagon? Like, Sergeant Major, like, come on. Like, particularly in the mid 80s, right? Like, and I was born in 85, so I'm probably not the best to comment on this, but I grew up in the 90s.
But you're right,
so I know how the dynamic was back then, right? And like, no, I just don't see an E4 being listened to at the Pentagon.
I didn't see it, man. But later on, I got what he was talking about because when I got there, now I wish I could honestly say that everything worked out great. It was okay. I got there and I was doing PT with an MP unit, and they're like, "You don't have to do PT with us. You can do it on your own." I'm like, "No, man. I'm used to being around a band of brothers and doing this stuff together." And I like the job in the Pentagon only because I was an admin person. I'm taking care of people, but I hated the environment that was around it. So I was constantly trying to find another unit to go to. And I never forget Major Oscar Davis. I had a great job at the MP company there on Fort Myer, and I was ready to go. Had a slot for me, and he disapproved it. And I was like, why are you holding me back? Who held you back in your career? That you taking it out on me? Just nonsense, man, coming from me. And he was like, I know you don't understand this now, but you need to understand that there's some jobs that's for certain people, and there's some jobs for people that can excel. And same thing as somebody to say, I see something in you. You don't see it in yourself. But we need to send you to something different than that. He said, you come up with something else, I'll sign it, but that's not where I'm sending you. So me and my buddy one day were trying to goof off on a Friday, and we saw an advertisement for White House Communications Ladies. Didn't know what it was. Had no clue. All we knew was, man, if we do this assignment, go to this thing at 9 in the morning, we can goof off for the rest of the day and have an early Friday. That was my whole mindset, Adam. And we
Yep.
go.
Typical junior
And
enlisted, right?
absolutely. So by
Sham
this time,
shield.
yeah, because now I'm, still E4 promotable, and go to there, fill out all this paperwork, go through all these questions. Didn't hear from them for almost like a year. And then I get a letter saying, congratulations, you've been accepted to Wise Communication. So now I'm like, what the heck is this? What did I sign up for? I'm calling all these sergeant majors that I know, like, hey, you heard about the White House? Like, oh, yeah, you're probably going to be making coffee for civilians and stuff like that. You don't want to go there. Like, well, it's too late. I'm already going. I'm just trying to get some advice on how to succeed and make it. And so then I go there and I find out that, so this is the only communications agency in the Army. Regular military members, all types of, obviously heavy on communications, but they have logistics people, they have HR people, they have finance people, and they have two missions. One job is to do your in-town mission, right? But then you also have this additional duty, which is a travel mission. So when the president goes out and people see him traveling, they don't realize there's 3 organizations that support him behind the scenes. Obviously, Secret Service, White House staff, and then you have the White House military office, which is all the military people that either do Air Force One, Marines that do HMX, the helicopter, and then you got White House Communications, which we provide all the communications. So whenever they go and travel, we basically take the White House on the road, set up all these cool communications. And then by me being an HR guy, my role was like a logistics coordinator. I was responsible for bringing the team in, coordinating with the hotel. I'm like, man, this is like out of the box thinking. Like, this is cool. Like, I'm going to like really, make the most out of this. So I started talking to other people that were there. Like, hey, man, how do I become like the best logistics coordinator? What they call it, operations NCO at that time. And it was like, and you got to take care of the team. You got to do this. You got to anticipate requirements. You got to be able to adjust on the fly. So I made all of that a part of my habit making. Like, I would tell them, like, hey, don't send me to the cushy Hawaii trips and all that. Like, send me to like they call them the down and dirties, right? Hey, so the natural disaster just happens. President's going to go visit that's hurricane damage. Like, send me on those type of trips. Because what I found out, Adam, was when you go to those trips, sometimes the rule book just goes out and it's like, you just got to make it up.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get the team there? Like, what resources can you pull into? And I didn't know it, but I just had a knack for doing the crazy stuff and making stuff happen that other people wouldn't think about.
It's almost like you get to exercise critical thinking and problem solving on a whole new level that you wouldn't get on those cushy Hawaii trips or whatever. And I respect the hell out of that. And that leads me kind of down this road. Like, you're a very driven man. And I think to be a driven man, you have to be very self-aware. So have you always been self-aware in like, because your example of reaching out to sergeant majors, what did I sign up for? And then, finding out, I'm going to be making coffee for civilians. Well, that's not an acceptable answer for me. I really want to know how I can succeed at this job. And, looking back on my career, I didn't do that as an infantry guy. I never went to somebody else. And, I was a part of the infantry, early in my career where when you made rank, from E4 to E5, you're leaving the platoon in the company and you're going to a different platoon. And then when you're going up for E6, you're leaving that company and probably that battalion altogether and you're going somewhere else. And I really believe in that system that the Army had instituted because it eliminated a lot of the crap. And I was even a part of it because, when the op tempo, increased and I was deployed every other year for my career, that all stopped. And you start getting these buddy systems that people take care of their own, right? Like, and I'm probably guilty of it to some extent, probably not as egregious as some others, but you fall into that trap. So I'm just curious, like, have you always been that self-aware or did you develop that as you kind of grew in the military?
I developed that because one thing that happened, and I tell people it goes back to growing up in the hood, like you had to keep your head on a swivel. It was like, Bullets don't have a name on it. Yeah, there was gangsters in my neighborhood that knew me, but depending on if they were high or drunk, and they didn't know me from anybody else, and would try to make an example out of me. So I was always like, okay, know your surroundings, know your environment, know what you need to do to survive. Right. So I kind of took that into the military. It's like, okay, how do I survive? Because man, I was only like 110 pounds, thin rail. My boys on the block was like, yeah, you'll be back here in about a month because you're not going to make it. You're too small. You're too weak.
Well,
Um,
that's determination enough to go ahead and find some kind of self-awareness to at least succeed in a career, maybe not be the best, but at least prove the guys on the block wrong. Like, I'm not going back here at all. Like, this is I did this for a reason, and now I'm going to show you I'm not coming back here. I don't care what you think of me. You don't get to influence me like that. And man, I really wish I would have had that when I was younger, because I wasted a lot of my life letting outside influences determine my self-worth.
no, and that's exactly what happened, Adam. I was just determined, like, I'm not going to, get these guys the satisfaction, right? Whatever it takes, I'm going to figure it out. And then once I got into the military, um, one thing I found out to me real early was I love what leadership looked like, even though I didn't know what it was at that time. I just like, man, who are these dudes that are, doing this, standing out? Like, what is that called? I remember going when I was in Europe, I went to like my first change of command, and I first time opened up a program, and I saw it was like a captain, right? And I saw her bio, and I'm like, whoa, I want one of these. Like, what
Yeah,
do I do to get a
right,
bio?
right.
Right? And I talked to some senior leaders, and they were like, hey, you got to do a whole lot of stuff to get a bio because that's just not for anybody. Yeah, like, but tell me what that is. So once people told me, and I'll never forget, it was this guy, Sergeant Rivera. He was the personnel NCO, freaking starch uniform. At that time, you had the black shiny boot.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, Sergeant Rivera, like, what do I do to be like you when I grow up, right? And that's what one thing he told me, man. He said, hey, you need to find a mentor, right? You can't follow the crowd, and you got to be better than everybody else. And I'm like, man, how do you do all of that? He was like, through time, but you got to keep that stuff. So when I went to the White House Communications Agency, I remember what Sergeant Rivera said: find a mentor, right? Be better than everybody else. Don't follow the crowd. Because even though that was a special assignment, I always tell people in any organization, there's always something that people are not cool about, they complain about, but you just got to stay driven and be like, what's my mission? What part of the mission can I control? And so when I started doing all those down and dirty trips, like, man, I was like high off that stuff. Like, man, what's the next one? Because I'm taking care of people, I'm meeting the mission, I'm making a name for myself. I'm like, man, this is cool. So I do all
You're
of
filling
this.
your cup. That's
Exactly.
yeah, and I think a lot of us don't do that in the middle. And I mean, being an
Hmm.
infantryman, it was great, and I wouldn't change my career. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Like,
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
my service to our country is very near and dear to my heart. Whether I have reservations about it, with the truth coming out about the global war on terror, all of that stuff, that's
Hmm.
neither here nor
Hmm.
there. Like, I still did something, and you did something that only 1% of the population ever does,
Absolutely.
right? and
Absolutely.
and we serve something bigger than ourselves. It took me a lot longer in my life to realize that that's what fills my cup up, is helping others and serving others. And I mean, we're all different in our journeys in life, and so, like, I'm so glad that it sounds like you had a really amazing career.
Oh, it was awesome. And then the best part I liked about it, because again, I tell anybody, leadership and power can be intoxicating. And depending on your values, it can go a different way. So I had people that had the same type of job I had, but they were a little bit more selfish. Like, we would go to certain places, and it's like, oh, you guys from the military, you're in Chicago. Hey, we got some free tickets, right? So I knew there were some guys that would be selfish, grab the tickets. Them and their boys would go, and people would always find out, even though they didn't say anything. And it's like, man, I don't want to travel with that guy. That guy, Darrell, man, he's selfish. He does this. So I would do the opposite. And to this day, like, all the trips I went on, any type of perk that we got, right, I would be like, hey, go to the team meeting, like, hey, we're going to have this many tickets. put your name in a hat. Those that want to go, like I was always up front. Never did anything for myself. I even got into it with a couple of officers because they were like, "Hey, how many tickets you have?" And I'm like, 8. And the little buzzword Adam was like, "No, you got 6." I'm
No,
like, "No,
no,
sir,
I've got 8.
I got 8
I
tickets."
know.
And they were like, "No, you got 6 because me and the deputy communications officer, we're gonna." And I stood my ground. I was like, "No, sir, your name's gonna go in the hat." Like, "Oh, you must not understand how this works." And I was like, "No, sir, you must not understand how this works." Right? You like, these are my values. I don't just carry the leadership card in my wallet. I actually live by this. And
Well,
if you got a
and
problem with that, you need to call back to DC and go bring in another logistics coordinator.
yeah, and not to mention, like, I hate officers and NCOs that are like that. I really hate that because it means so much to the junior enlisted to be able to, because if you really think about it, the way the military is structured, like, the junior enlisted is the workhorses. The NCOs are just
Absolutely.
there to supervise. The good
Absolutely.
ones will work, next to them and get their hands dirty. But the higher you get up on that ladder, the more you see that, happening. And just, you'd be surprised, just 2 tickets to a basketball game to see the Bulls
Yes.
play, what that
Yes.
will do for E4 and below in their morale. Like, night and day difference. Send them to a game on a Friday night and watch what happens to their work ethic and their performance when they show up to work on Monday.
Absolutely, Adam. So I discovered that from some other really great mentors early on, and I was like, "That's what I want to do. That's the type of leader I want to be," and I did it, man. So out at the agency, like I was known, like when they would send officers to get, because you have to be qualified, so you do so many trips, and then also they say what they call an evaluation trip. Like I was that dude. They was like, "Hey, Adam's going for his qualification trip as an officer, communications officer. We need to send, Darrell because he's the only guy that we know that's not going to let the trip fail, but also is going to help, mentor, coach that guy." So I just thrived in that, man. I loved it. And then after about 6 years, I went through a real bad relationship. I had to reset my life, and I called my branch manager. Like, "Hey, man, I want to leave. Go get my boots dirty again." And he was like, "Oh man, to tell me you to get in trouble. It's hard to find a guy with that type of clearance." I'm like, no. I'm at the top of my game. I'm good. I just need to, reset. So
It's
they
time
sent
for
me.
a change. Yeah.
That was it. So they sent me to Korea, and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna bring you back because of that clearance you have. It's hard to find guys." I'm like, "You don't have to bring me back, but if you do, I'm okay with that." So I go to Korea. I'm like a platoon sergeant, brigade NCOIC for this MI unit, which is so cool because the MI guys at that time, um, 96, like they didn't want to do the Army stuff. All they want to do was the cool MI stuff. And I'm like, "Okay, I got it." So I'm like the platoon sergeant. There's an MP that's the first sergeant, and we're both like, "Hey, man, how are we gonna do this, right? How are we gonna take care of this?" So, and we started just bringing just regular leadership fundamentals to the brigade, to the point where we were, showing the younger soldiers how to do PT, how to extend the formation, prepping them for PLDC, and all.
Yeah.
Like we just thrived on that stuff. And man, I remember one time these junior officers or senior CO that never came to the formation started coming. And soldiers were making mistakes when they extended the formation, and they were like, "That's not how you do it," and da da. So I had to pull all these guys at the end of the form. "Hey, I need you guys to come see me after PT." Came in, man. I must have lit into every one of them, right? Because by this time now I'm E7. Don't care about anybody else. You can't scare me.
DA select, baby.
Oh,
Congress.
exactly.
You come get it.
You can't talk to me like that because these are other E7s and E8s. And I'm like, "Man, let me tell you something. We're building a culture here. We're trying to teach people." "Well, how can you teach somebody if you let them make mistakes?" I said, "Because they're going to grow through their mistakes.
Yeah,
We're not
because
going to
that's the
bust
only
them
way you
out."
learn.
Exactly.
The mistakes and failure. I say this all the time when I talk to people about business. I'm excited to fail. Why am I excited to fail? Because it's going to teach me the lesson that I couldn't otherwise learn any other way.
Absolutely, absolutely, Adam. So that's what we told them. Like, we're going to correct them, but we're not going to correct them in front of everybody during the time. We're going to pull them to the side afterwards. We're going to walk with them. Oh, we didn't know y'all were doing that. Well, if you would have kept your mouth shut and just let us do our job, you would have found that out. So if you want to be a part of the solution, come back next week. But if not, don't come back to my formation.
Yeah.
So
Two
I was
ears
just
and one mouth for a reason. Yep.
absolutely.
Yep.
So anyway, I did that job, left Korea, went back to the White House Communications Agency. So now I'm at E7. So now I found out that the E6 and belows are logistics coordinators for the presidential side. On the VP side, they had E7s and E8s that were the communications officer / logistics coordinator. So you did both jobs, but it was a smaller team. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is great. You got E7s running this show. Like, oh man, we're gonna do this up. So I just learned that job, learned it really well, and then I became like I was the training guy. That was my nickname, right? Every trip you go on, whether it was a plush trip or a hard trip, we're always going to take out time. We're going to train, and I want the junior people to train up on the equipment. I don't want the senior guys to do it because I want to build confidence in everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, did that trip. Then 9/11 happened because at that time the vice president only got support when he traveled. He
Okay.
never got in-town support. That's just something that we didn't do. So for those that remember, Adam, when 9/11 happened, the president was at a elementary school in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Vice President Cheney was back here calling all the shots and doing all kind of cool stuff. So after 9/11, a lot of agencies in DC area had to change how they did stuff, especially what they called emergency actions, right? It was always written if something happens and the president takes over, but what happens if he doesn't take over and you still got other stuff going on or things like that? So anyway, out of all these 30 senior NCOs, I was one of 5 that they picked. It ran us through this special training, emergency action training, like, how would you do this if another 9/11 happened, what type of equipment we would use, that type of stuff. And the funny part, Adam, was when they first picked me, I turned it down. I was like, nah, that sounds like too much travel. I'm involved in my community, right? I'm working with youth, right? Because I'm from Compton. I'm working with these kids in Maryland and all that. Like, no, I need to keep working with these kids. And they're like, no, you don't understand. You don't have an option. I'm like, no, there's all other seniors here that they would love to fly on Air Force Two and get all the perks and all that. And what the guy told me was, he said, but that's one of the reasons we're picking you.
Because you don't want the job. It's always the guy who doesn't want the job that's the best fit for the job. And the longer I live and the more kind of, I guess, doors that open for me, the more I see that as a true statement. Like, it really just genuinely is that way. I'm not I can use myself as an example. Running this podcast and being a leader in the transitioning veteran space, with everything that I've learned, I've never thought that I'm the best guy to do this at all. I'm not the guy who wanted his face out there and to be known as that guy. And I think that's why I'm getting so much traction and making a difference, because I just didn't want to be that guy. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like, there's a need for that, and so I agree with what you're saying. And so it sounds like your whole career more or less was spent at the White House doing some really cool, awesome opportunity stuff. And in the interest of time, we've got to move on to your transition. 20 years is a long time. And, I can imagine the culture shock that comes with leaving the White House and all the cool stuff that you're doing. So how was the transition for you? Why did you decide to retire at 20 years? And talk about some of the challenges you faced when you were transitioning out.
Sure. So first of all, I got to let everybody know this is 2005. So LinkedIn has not been created. They did not have hiring for heroes and all these other cool things that they have now, right? This is just you getting out on your own, right? So one of the things I did about a year out, I was interviewing people that were getting out. And I was like, hey, what are you doing to prepare? I know there's TAP, but what else is there? And I was just keeping all these cool notes. So when people were coming to getting out, they were like, hey, man, you need to go talk to Darrell. He's got like, all these cool notes. And so I was already practicing sharing what I had with these other people. Like, hey, man, here's a lesson learned that they said they would do this, do that. So by the time I got out, I was like, oh, man, I should be good. And even as I got closer, people were like, hey, man, give me a call, I'm with this company and da-da-da. And for people that don't know, back in 2005, it was a real bad economy plunge. Like, it was really bad. So, like, I'm calling people, and they're like, oh, man, if you would have just called me, like, a year ago or 6 months ago, like, we don't have anything open. So it was like, okay, got it. It's not their fault. Don't get mad at the world. Just what's next? And I just started beating the pavement, started working on my resume more, calling any place I could just to try to get in there. So the transition was really, really hard. And one thing I always tell people, I used to wake up in the morning, still like my regular military time. Only difference is I would walk my wife out to the car, give her a kiss, go back in the house, and start looking for a job.
Right. Well, and you've said a couple of things that I think are really important. First of all, the fact that you took notes, interviewing guys that were getting out to find out what they're doing to prepare themselves for getting out. And I imagine there was another element of that where you would stay in contact with them for a little bit after they got out to ask them how their transition was going and what challenges they were running into. Another prime example of something that a transitioning veteran should be doing, 18 months to 24 months before they get out. I firmly believe that. The second thing I imagine that you were doing, and you didn't really say it, but I think you probably were leveraging it a lot. I imagine you had a pretty awesome network just having worked in the White House, right? And that's something that I didn't understand the importance of when I was getting out. And every other guest that's been on this show has echoed that same sentiment. A lot of them either, few and far between. I would say you're an outlier on this show with understanding the power of a network. And I think it's largely based on kind of your assignments in the military, and you saw the value of building that network, particularly in the White House, because in my opinion, the White House is really, you get those jobs through having a network, right? Like, you have to know somebody to be working in that place. And I didn't know anything about building a network at all. What I knew was kick in doors and shoot people in the face, right? Like, that's my role. That's what I'm going to be good at. And nobody ever told me about building a network. I had one platoon sergeant, I think midway through my career, who was, like, LinkedIn is a thing. You should set this profile up. I just read this article that says, companies are using LinkedIn to match your resume and find out more about you. So you should at least create a profile. That's about as far as I made it. I created a profile and did nothing with it until last year. You know what I mean? So I'm so glad to hear you talking about those things, because even though you had the network and you had taken notes, sometimes it's just challenging because
it doesn't work.
The economy, in your case, 3 years later, you'd have 2008 and the housing market crash, which would bring in a whole nother, shitstorm of trouble for guys getting out,
Yeah.
So I'm so glad to hear that you had done that. At what point was, Alliance Seminars coaching born? Was it born in that struggle of finding a job? Did you know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? What did that kind of journey look like for you?
Right. So it actually grew up on the church side, because what happened was there used to be Alliance Ministries. Because here's what I did when I got out. So I used to work with youth, right? So that was really my heart, man. Like, I wanted to help. It's like, there's no way I can get out of Compton, do what I did, and not pay it forward. Like, I have to find kids that I can work with, right? Send me the tough kids. Send me the ones that, no, you don't want to talk to them because they don't listen.
You're helping your past self.
Absolutely.
You're helping your past self. And man, that's such an important perspective to have. Like in anything you do in life, what would you tell your younger version of yourself?
Absolutely,
the person that you used to be, because that informs the direction you're going to go now.
You're exactly right. So Alliance Ministries was not just me having a successful youth ministry, but I'm thinking Army, right? I'm like, how do I help these other churches that are willing to be a part of this group? Let's create a network of youth ministers. Let's meet once a quarter. Let's talk about our challenges, our struggles. Let's share resource. Like, I'm bringing all this stuff, and they're like, no, you don't understand. Churches don't talk to each other, or these groups don't talk to them. I'm like, why not? Like that's why the
Exactly. Why
military
not?
is so successful, man. The Army, the Navy, Marines, like we talk to each other, we help each other grow, we share resources. So I took that whole military mentality, started Alliance Ministries, creating a network, and then eventually it shifted to Alliance Seminars because I was like, okay, I'm too old to be a youth minister. I need to find another way to help people, right? And I still was helping people on the side with military transition. Like I never lost that. I just, did it on the side. And then my wife was like, why don't we just rebrand ourselves and call ourselves Alliance, Seminars Coaching? Because at that time I got certified as a coach. She got certified. And they always tell you, find your niche, right? So she's like, okay, she's going to work with women and deal with empowerment and relationships. And I'm like, well, okay, well, I'm going to work with men and I'm going to work with military transition veterans and leadership. And that's how Alliance Seminars Coaching came about. And it allowed me to still help military members who were transitioning. So now instead of me just doing it on the side, now I'm doing it underneath a true LLC. And it just fit, my values.
What were some of the challenges in creating Alliance Seminars Coaching and getting your first clients and kind of becoming known? I mean, was that a challenge for you, or were you able to leverage that network that you had built to get some help in that?
So the interesting part was I was an unknown. I was a no name, so like nobody really knew me except for the people that I would help. So the good thing about me was I wasn't doing the business for the money. I had, found another job, worked for the government, but I was still going to do this as what I really wanted to do. The government was just paying the rent and, all that good stuff.
It's funding the thing that you really want to be doing, and until it doesn't
Absolutely.
have to fund the thing that you really want to be doing anymore, because the thing that you really want to be doing is now paying the bills.
Exactly. So my mindset was different from everybody else. Some people they started a business because that was their only source of income. I started my business because I wanted to help people. So I never had the pressure of, and
Making
matter
the
of fact,
sales and getting the clients,
exactly.
and you could take your time and actually build it right because you chose to delay the gratification that would come from the business by working that government job to pay the bills, and then
Absolutely.
sacrificing your time at night and weekends to
And
build
it's
the
okay.
coaching. Yep. Yep, and that's what
Because
it takes. and
that's what I
and,
wanted
and
to do.
yeah, I love that, man.
And and then even after I started helping military people, then the word started getting out. It was like, hey, call this guy, And then I joined my alumni association. They wanted me to do all the different stuff. I was like, dude, all I want to do is help transition veterans. If you got a job for me to do that, I'm your guy. But other than that, I'm not trying to do anything else. They're like, no, 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 be the transition guy. Be the transition guy. So I already had a steady flow of not clients, but people that I could at least go help. And after a while, it was so funny. Adam, people like, man, you should be charging for this. You should be charging for it. I'm like, I don't want to charge for this because I'm helping my fellow brothers and sisters that are transitioning. I, why would I want to charge them? They already got stress with the transition. I don't want. No, I'm not
It's
charging.
tough. It's a tough thing, right? Because
Yeah,
I work in the same space very differently than you do, and what I'm finding is veterans tend to be lazy and entitled. They you can give them everything that they need for free, but if they don't have skin in the game, it doesn't mean anything. And I'm guilty of this. I've said this a lot in the last couple of weeks, in the last couple of shows that we've recorded here. I'm guilty just as much. I have an entire folder of free swipe files and different things that will unlock things for me. To this day, I've never even opened it. That tells you that not all things that are free are valuable to you. If I would have
exactly.
paid just $5 for that folder, I guarantee you I'd have opened it a million times, because now I have invested something into it. And it's the same
Exactly.
challenge that I had to face when I started my community and asked people to pay me money to be a member, of that community. However, that's now free, and we've put some other things behind a paywall to kind of open it up to more people. It's the lessons that you learn through doing the thing, that inform everything else. And again, going back to not being afraid to fail, like I welcome the failure. I learned so many lessons by putting the entire community behind a paywall, finding out that the value's there. It's just they're not ready to buy or not qualified buyers. So let's make it free. Oh, now we've got an influx of new members, and now they're going to give me more information so that I know what to create that will generate more revenue. And it's all going to work out. I would have never known that if I would have never just given up the MRR I had and open the whole community for free, right? Like, by and large, that's, some people would call that a failure. You're giving up money that you have coming in on a monthly basis, making something free to learn a lesson. Like, who does that? Well, I tell you who does that. A business owner does that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, the things that I share with a lot of transitioning veterans, again, find a mentor, right?
So important. So important.
Exactly. Maximize LinkedIn. Don't be afraid to talk to people. That's one of the things I remember back in 2005. It was people that were struggling, but they would never tell anybody. So when I was going through my time, I would tell people like, hey, man, I'm still looking for a job myself, but however, I will still help you with your resume, right? Just send it to me and I'll dress it up and take out the acronyms and all that stuff. So that's one thing I learned was, even though you're going through, still be willing to help others because you don't know where your break is going to come. So I had people say, man, I didn't even know you were like still looking when you were helping me. I'm like, because the job that my belief was, there's a job out there for all of us, right? I shouldn't be like, well, I'm going to wait and not talk to anybody or help anybody until I get mine. Like, no, if you get yours first, that's great. If somebody else gets it, that's fine. So again, finding a mentor, talking to others, maximizing LinkedIn. And again, like you said, don't take no as a failure. Just like, that's just not the right job.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with that. So what are the most common problems that, and I have my opinions on this, and this is really kind of a selfish thing for me to do, but I want to ask you the main problems that you see in your line of work with transitioning veterans. I want to compare notes here because I'm willing to bet they're probably a lot the same challenges that we see in the clients that we work with. So what are the top three that you see veterans struggling with in transition?
Well, one is a difference. First one is between officers and enlisted. For some reason, it seems like the officers, I don't care where you are, they just have such a tight network that they really help out each other. Where on the enlisted side, it just seems like we're kind of scattered. We're a little bit more selfish.
A lot more cliquey, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, man, we got to help each other. It's like, get out of this mindset of, like, I can't help you. You need to struggle the way I struggle. No,
Yeah,
man.
right. No.
Like,
No.
stop thinking like that. That is such old school thinking. It's like, no, if I struggled, I want to let you know why I struggled. And here's what I would recommend or I would do differently. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times we just don't help each other the way we should help each other. I think the other part that I see is sometimes we're a little bit arrogant. Right. It's like, I did this, so I know that I should start with this amount or I should be doing this. And it's like, no, man, that's a whole new ball game. And you got to learn that whole new ball. I always tell people, it's like being in the military is like playing in the SEC. It's tough. It's really competitive. I said, but once you get out and you got the whole world you compete with, that's like being in the NFL, man. Everybody belongs there, right? But what can you do to make yourself stick, right, to wherever that industry is that you're trying to go to? And another thing I say is, third thing is, we don't do our homework enough. Like, we can't just get out and say, I led 5,000 people.
I was
X
in
amount of
charge of
equipment.
X million dollars of equipment.
Right.
I was going right
Like,
there with you, man.
yeah, it's like that doesn't transcribe to the civilian side. So you got to talk to people and say, hey, how do I say this in the civilian language? Because I heard a lot of military guy that transition said civilian people don't appreciate the military. And what I've seen, I'm sure there's some truth to that, but the majority of it was we just didn't do enough of our homework to make it work, to say, okay, I know you don't understand battalion, but consider this like I led this department. I led this organization, right? Instead of saying platoon sergeant, right, I was a senior manager. right? Finding the right words so you can really show them this is what I did.
Well, not only that, but like you said, adding to that, doing your homework and knowing, okay, if I'm applying for a sales job, I need to speak sales language, right? If I'm
Yes,
applying for an IT job, I need to translate my experience into IT speak, not into military acronyms. And I managed a budget of $15 million worth of equipment. They don't really care. They really don't care, and those are very common ones that I see too. The biggest one I see is the loss of identity. I think for me, my number two is very much along the lines of what yours was, but I would phrase it differently. And refusal to ask for help, just being stubborn and thinking that we can do it all on our own, because that's a very enlisted mentality. I think you would agree with that, right? Like you started your career very much like that, wanting to get your boots dirty, being very individualistic, not asking for help, And then the third thing, and we've talked about this at length, it's the leveraging of a network or building of a network. And I agree with you. I think officers and enlisted definitely have different struggles in transition. Not to say that the officers aren't without their struggles, because I've had plenty of them,
they
to
do.
include
They
full
still
bird
do.
colonels on this show that went through their own problems with and those are people that you would never expect, right? Like
Hmm.
we think
Hmm.
full bird colonels and above, they get out of the Army, they walk right into some job in the Pentagon or at the White House or some giant Fortune 500 company, and that's just really not the
It's not the
case.
truth. It is not true. You're right.
And so those are kind of my three things, and they're right in line with what you're saying too, right?
You're
Like
right.
it's all the same stuff. And so I'm so glad to know that there's a man like you, as accomplished as you are, who you know I guess this is my next question for you. Like, how did you not let all of your success go to your head? Because let's be honest, there are examples of people who come from where I come from and who come from where you come from, who get to the level of success and recognition that you do, who are not willing to pay it forward and give that back. So do you have any idea where that comes from?
I think for me is one, I surrounded myself, Adam, with a lot of senior guys that were married for a long time, which I didn't see that growing up, right? Not just high rank, but they were just successful dudes. So I was not afraid to, ask a guy, hey, can we go to lunch? Right. And for me, I would just pick their brain. I would just honestly just ask them, like, how do you not get caught up in this? How do you not chase all these skirts that are flaunting themselves in front of you and stay truly married? You know what I mean? Because I saw a
Yeah,
lot of stuff out there, and it's like it would have been easy to fall into that trap.
it's so
And
easy to fall into the
oh,
trap.
it is.
Particularly like with the time that I was in from '03 to 15, being deployed every other year, no
Mm-hmm.
financial education, so not budgeting money. I don't know if I'm going to come home from this deployment, because let's be honest, from 2003 to 2015, it was wild, wild west over there. Shit was happening. Then you've got the drinking culture, which is so much a part, particularly of the infantry world. If you don't drink, you're going to be ridiculed for that. If you do drink too much, you're going to get in trouble for that. Then you become an alcoholic. Then you struggle with it when you get out, right? Like I think those are great examples of how you just have this level of self-awareness, and maybe you're just gifted and that it was just there for you, and that I need to surround myself with people. I have an eye for the people who are on a path that I want to be on, and not all of us are fortunate enough to have that gift, and we have to develop that over time, through lots and lots of roadblocks, right? Like
No,
and it's okay, but I really think that it's the conversations like this is why I started this show, right? Like that somebody can hear your story, see the things that you accomplished, knowing where you grew up. And we didn't talk a lot about, what it was like when you grew up, because I don't think that's
we know.
important. You can say
Right.
Compton in the 80s and everybody
That's it.
knows,
Yep, that's
like,
it.
but knowing that you're not alone and that it's okay to ask for help, I think is one of the biggest things. And then
Huge.
the other thing that you said is, don't be afraid to talk to people. I talk to so many veterans. How are you so good at networking? Because that's the reputation I'm getting, is just being this super connector or this super networker. And let me tell you, it's a lot of fun. First of all, it's so much fun to be a professional networker. I didn't even think I'd ever hear those words out of my own mouth about myself, but man, the opportunity that comes with it, the caliber of people that you get to meet, the relationships that you get to develop. And I have a whole entire course on this. It's like an hour-long networking video that I did for my community when it was still a paid community that is now, free. And they were blown away by my approach to it. I don't think there's anything fancy that goes into networking. It's a matter of you getting out of your own way and sending that message to that person. Similarly to how I got you to come on this show. I sent you a message on Podmatch, said, hey, I think you would bring a ton of value to my show, my audience, my listener, whatever we're supposed to call them. I'm not politically correct here, but but I was like, I'd love for you to check out my profile and see if you're interested. And that's it. Like, either he's going to say yes or he's going to say no. And if he says no, well, that's one more closer to my yes.
Exactly. And I think the other part of that too, for me, what helped me was I always wanted to help people, and I still want to help people. So it's like, what's going to put me in a light where I can keep helping people? So that's why, like, people are like, why are you still networking? Why are you connecting with talent acquisition people on LinkedIn? Like, you have a job. You already said you're not leaving the government. I'm like, you're right, but it's not for me.
No, it's for everybody else that I can help.
Said,
yes.
Hey, I want to get into this industry. Okay, hey, that's not my industry, but guess what? Contact this person, tell them I sent you. And the other part I love about networking for me is I'm not afraid to ask. And rarely do I ask for anything for myself. Almost everything is always for somebody else, which to me, that's like me getting paid $1,000, because it's like, you made it, you got it. That brings me joy.
100% to your point, right? Like, so, there's a whole methodology to how you can grow, an audience and all of this stuff. And moral of the story is I have pretty much kind of stopped all LinkedIn engagement. I kind of post and ghost now so that I'm maintaining some kind of presence, but my calendar is still filling up. And you know why it's filling up? Because I don't ask people for shit ever.
Yep, it's true.
It just starts to come out of the woodwork your way. In the last 3 weeks, I've been offered a franchise. I get to have a meeting with a Medal of Honor recipient and ex-Secretary of Defense. I did not seek this meeting out. This was a cold DM to me. And just, I got to refer a awesome new person in my network to the podcast hosting network that's made for veterans that she had no idea existed, right? And through all of that, I get a partnership out of that. I get collaboration opportunities. I get articles written about me and my journey, and it's like,
love it.
I never asked for any of this stuff. It just starts to come your way. Have you found that to be the case for you as well?
Absolutely. And you're an example, Adam, of what I share with people. I was like, there's a internal reward for being a certain type of person and doing certain type of things that everybody doesn't get to experience. And they're like, well, that stuff only happens to people like you. I'm like, yeah, but there's a reason why.
I used to think like that. And it's
right.
It's the reason that stuff happens to those other people and not you is because you're thinking like that. Words have power. Words are energy. Yes. You put that out into the universe, and I promise that's what you're going to get back. If you put good and love out into the universe, it comes back to you tenfold. I didn't believe it for the longest time, and then I started practicing.
I subscribe to that. I've always subscribed to that, and to this day, I just believe that's the way it should be. And again, it's not for everybody, and I get it, but when people are like, no, really, like, how can I be a speaker like you? Matter of fact, I was at a change of command ceremony for an agency a couple of months ago, and this guy's like, man, I see you on LinkedIn all the time, and you're speaking at this place. Like, man, how do I become a speaker? And I told them, I don't look for the places that pay. I look for the places where I can bring the most value. I said, you need to understand, most of the places I speak at, there's no charge. No, but you got to charge. You're a Hall of Famer. You're this. I'm like, those type of jobs will come later on after I get the kids into college and, I write my book. All that stuff will happen. Right now, it's all about me just making a difference.
I love that, brother. Darrell, please tell everybody how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in some leadership coaching from you. If they just want to, follow your journey and look at the content that you put out, just let them know. Let them have everything.
Oh, no, sure. They can find me on LinkedIn, I'm still one of the old school people that's on Facebook. I haven't graduated to
To
all the
Instagram.
other Instagrams yet. I'm
Yeah.
sure I will. So on Facebook, Alliance Seminars, coaching, and then obviously the website, allianceseminars.org. And again, I just like helping people, man. I mean, that's just who I am. And like I said, I know all the other stuff will happen in due time. But I just get such a thrill of helping people, especially transitioning veterans, man. It's just one of the best things I can do to help.
I love it, brother. Darrell, thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful for your time, and what an amazing conversation we've had. Ladies and gentlemen, until next week, please don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, like, download, comment, share with everybody in your network so that we can hopefully accomplish my goal of getting this in front of 1 million veterans by the time I turn 40 next May. Until next week, this has been Darrell Williams from Alliance Seminars Coaching. Again, thank you so much, Darrell, for being here. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me, Adam. Appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, brother. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at the Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.